Here we go. So welcome everyone to this webinar presentation on acid reflux, which is also called or known as GERD in America very often, and or indigestion, heartburn. I will basically usually put everything in, acid reflux in all of that. So I'm just double checking. Okay, I've got lots of answers in there. My chat has finally started working, which is great. Nottinghamshire for Matthew. Okay. Worthing, Carl. Brilliant. Not very far then. Smita, hi. So a few neighbors of mine. And iPhone Stacy is from Connecticut. Brilliant. I used to live in Boston for 4 years when I was young. So not far from Connecticut and from Uckfield. Brilliant. So welcome everyone. Like I said, this is presentation on acid reflux, and this will be recorded, and I'm going to start presenting so we can get moving. And so if there's any problem with your screen, let me know if you can't see any of that. I will share my screen right now. If at any point you have any questions, please write them down, or you can always write them in the chat, or wait till the end of the presentation, and then you can ask your questions. So this is Ask Me Anything About Guts, and specifically today, acid reflux. I need to say that the information on this course is not intended to replace your medication or advice from your GP or MD in America or specialist, and is not intended as medical advice. It's intended as sharing of my knowledge and information based on my own training, research, and experience, and my work as a nutritional therapist and health coach. So I encourage you to make your own healthcare decisions based upon your own research and in partnership with your qualified healthcare professionals. That's a bit of the legal stuff I need to put in there. My mission for today is to give you some clarity on acid reflux, heartburn, GERD, indigestion, to be really helpful with some steps you can act on right now for immediate results. And these are steps that I've worked with a lot of my clients over the years, and also to give you hope that you can live life free of the symptoms of acid reflux. And I will answer your most pressing questions at the end, like I said. So this isn't a place for personal diagnosis, although I can talk to you generally about acid reflux. If you ask me specifically about your own issues, I might be limited in giving you advice specifically for yourself, as I wouldn't have enough information. It's not also a place to give you advice for supplement or medication. So I might talk about supplements and medication as a general, generally, but not specifically. I will not advise you specifically on a particular supplement. And if you want to have that personal touch, if you want that advice, that guidance, you can book a free consultation. And I will put the link for booking a free consultation with me in the chat. So who am I? I'm Natalie Sansonetti, and I help women and men like you to get rid of their gut problems, to improve their moods, immunity, energy, so they can enjoy the normal and exciting things in their lives, like food and eating out whenever we can eat out, travel when we can travel, going to friends, and just enjoying normal life as well. Why should you listen to me? I'm a qualified nutritional therapist, food allergy and intolerant therapist. I also practice EFT, which is emotional freedom technique, tapping, and I'm a certified health and life coach as well. I have over 11 years of experience helping hundreds of clients through one-to-one programs, which are online. So I work with people from all over the world. I've also worked in retreats when we were able to do retreats. And I've talked at talks, I've done talks, conferences, and various schools and companies locally. I'm very passionate about the healing powers of food, and I have been for over 30 years. And I'm a mom of 2 teenage boys, the joys, and I've worked in the corporate world for years. So I have a good idea of what happens with my clients who mostly work in the corporate world as well, and who I know are very pressurized and stressed. And, you know, I know what it's like to be limited in time as well. So let's talk about acid reflux right now. First of all, are you alone if you're suffering from acid reflux? Probably not. The heartburn and acid reflux actually affects 25% of the UK population. That's a quarter of the population. And it's actually 33% of the Western population, if you look at the West. So that's huge, huge numbers. GERD is the most common digestive disorder in the US, and GERD is basically repetitive acid reflux. It becomes a disease, which is the most common digestive disorder in the US. It affects at least 20% of the population on a weekly basis, and it's common in men and women from 25 to 74 years old, so pretty much anyone and everyone. I've also seen young children, in fact, younger and younger children and teenagers with acid reflux and GERD. Welcome, Heather. So where is this? So Mark came to me, just an example, just over a year ago, and he had incredibly painful gut issues, bloating, constipation, diarrhea. He was on omeprazole on a long-term basis. And after working with me for a couple of months, he felt much more in charge of his diet and his life. He said, I'm less tired, I know what to avoid and what I can ingest without fear of rejection from his gut. He said it turned his life around from an ongoing inconvenience that cost him days of work, missed evenings out, and general lethargy and poor quality of life. This is one example of a client I helped with this. So some symptoms of acid reflux can be burning in the throat or the chest, food and acid or acid coming up the esophagus. The esophagus is the windpipe, or not the windpipe, the pipe that goes inside your, the top of your stomach. And you might have coughs or inflammation of the throat. So you feel like your throat or your voice is actually husky as well. That's a very common symptom. You might get asthma because sometimes food or acid gets into the lungs, and you might have difficulty swallowing. A lot of my clients actually have a problem with a lump in their throat. That's a very common symptom. So some long-term consequences of untreated acid reflux can be sleep deprivation. If you suffer during the night, you will have sleep deprivation for sure. And that will bring obviously chronic fatigue with all the problems that entails. Then you might have burning in the chest, which can increase to the point where you actually feel you're having a heart attack. And this is very common again. A lot of, or some of the heart attacks, or people, suspected of heart attacks that go to the hospital very often are having a crisis with acid reflux. That does happen quite commonly. You could then get ulceration, bleeding, and inflammation of the esophagus, which is esophagitis. This can also lead to respiratory problems, especially if acid and particles of food go into the lungs. You could get, with the esophagitis, you get difficulty swallowing. That's very common, which then can lead to nutrient depletion, a lot of weight loss, anemia, and weakened immunity. Barrett's esophagus is when the inflammation at the base of your esophagus actually changes the lining changes, the nature of the lining actually changes and then becomes inflamed and can cause, cancer of the esophagus as well. And you can also, very often, a lot of the people I help with acid reflux will have IBS symptoms, which is, erratic bowel movements, cramping in the gut. So whatever is going on up here and in the stomach is actually going to affect the whole digestive system. Very often acid reflux does not happen on its own, unfortunately. There will be other symptoms like bloating and erratic bowel movements, etc. So Anne, for example, who came to work with me also a couple of years ago, she had painful tummy aches, acid reflux, severe bloating for many years. This is a lady who was over 70 years old, and she was told she had IBS, something she would have to live with. After working with me for 3 months, she was completely pain-free, no tummy aches, acid reflux, no bloating. She lost some weight, she felt a lot better and loved her food. She was actually on a very bland, beige food diet when she came to see me, and ended up at the end of her program having a completely pretty much normal diet, normal foods. So some causes of acid reflux. Let's get to the nitty-gritty. And this is where you might be surprised by what I have to say. And this is completely supported by research. Don't believe I made this up. Acid reflux is not caused by too much acid against, all the thoughts you might have on the subject, or against all beliefs you might have on that. It's actually caused by too little gastric acid. And it's also a combination of low gastric acid and low esophageal sphincter dysfunction, or LES. Let me use LES as a shorter description. The LES is basically when the sphincter, which is the valve at the bottom of the esophagus, does not close up properly for various reasons, and that lets in whatever acid is around the esophagus, which then feels like acidic reflux. So low gastric acid will slow your digestion. That's what's going to happen. It will then cause bacterial overgrowth, which a lot of people, feel a lot of bloating in the upper digestive system, where the stomach is, like around your ribs, the center of your ribs. The problem with bloating there is that it's bacteria that's formed, nasty bacteria that's formed, because slow digestion means that the food there does not get broken down for whatever reason, and the main reason being the low gastric acid. What happens then when the food gets stuck there, doesn't get broken down and passed on to the next level of digestion, is that bacteria will start overgrowing there. That in itself will cause fermentation and gas, which will then put pressure upwards inside the abdominal cavity, inside your stomach, and that pressure will push the gas upwards towards the esophagus, which then pushes whatever little acid you might have there and particles of food as well, which then causes your acid reflux. So remember that low gastric acid means that you cannot digest properly. Your food will sit there for hours and sometimes days on end, which will then allow the bacteria, nasty bacteria, to overgrow there, and it will cause gas, it will cause pressure, in the stomach, and the pressure will go up towards the sphincter of the esophagus, the LES, remember, and causing acid reflux. This is what happens. Low stomach acid, slow digestion, bacterial overgrowth, and also carbohydrates will be undigested, which then causes gas, increased pressure in the stomach. The weak esophagus valve will then allow the food and acid to go up. So what are some causes of low acid? This is very common with age. From the age of about 20, we start reducing our production of gastric acid. Believe me, you do need gastric acid in order to digest. That's just something that you cannot do without. Otherwise, you will get all these problems. Long-term use of acid-lowering medications, proton inhibitors, all the omeprazoles, all these medications basically can give that in the long term. This is why when you read the leaflet inside those medications, it actually says it's not for long-term use, because they stop you from producing gastric acid to stop you getting that acidity, that acid feeling at the bottom of your esophagus. Stress is a massive reason. That's why I put it up at the top. It's a huge reason why we stop producing gastric acid. Infections, so you could have infections, and which can then cause also ulcers, which can cause low gastric acid. High carbohydrates or sugary diets and junk food, the timing of food also, when are you eating in a day or drinking, if you're drinking lots of water while you're eating, that increases the pressure of the food, of the cavity, what's inside the stomach, which then pushes more of the food and the gastric acid upwards towards the LES. And how you eat is very, very important. We're going to go into that in a minute. Causes of the valve dysfunction can be overeating or obesity. When you eat too much, then it pushes against the valve at the lower part of your esophagus. Some medications as well, so you can recognize some of these, some sedatives, antibiotics, iron, potassium supplements. So not all supplements are good for you. They might cause that valve to get softer and to open up a little bit too much. Also, peppermint is another one that allows the LES to happen, unfortunately, as well. Alcohol is a big cause of it. Smoking is also very common as a cause of the valve not working properly. High carbohydrates, junk food, fatty foods, sugary foods, other trigger foods. We'll talk about these in a minute. So these are also caused by obesity or being overweight, generally. Overeating, when you eat too much at each meal rather than splitting your meals into little meals, throughout the day, that's gonna help. Posture when you're eating, because if you're eating, watching TV, on your sofa and you're completely crunched up and your entire digestive system, if you think about it, is all kind of bunched up, nothing is going to go down properly. So it will help a lot. Also, when you're lying in bed, posture, or when you're bending down, when you exercise, that's going to affect for some of you, how much acid and food is actually going up. How you eat is hugely important. It's not just what you eat. And in fact, that's why I've put what you eat after how you eat, because it's actually more important how you eat. And we'll talk about that in a second. So first of all, common trigger foods, you probably know about these. Sugars and carbohydrates are very, very commonly difficult to digest for people who have low gastric acid, so not recommended at all. Tomatoes are very common. Citrus fruits, although lemons are often tolerated quite well. Fried foods, especially deep fried foods, are going to be a big trigger food. Dairy is also a big one. Coffee, alcohol, and finally some gluten as well. Gluten grains generally for gastric acid, for proper production of enzymes and for proper digestion. Gluten and dairy are going to be a challenge if you already have problems with your digestive system. So here are some tips. First of all, what you eat. You need to know your triggers. And the best way to do that is to basically eat your normal foods. Try and see amongst all the foods that I've mentioned, the tomatoes and sugars and all of these, try and see, and the likelihood if you've had acid reflux for a while, you already know what your trigger foods are. But try and see by removing one at a time for maybe a few weeks, whether you lower your symptoms, whether you feel any better, and then reintroduce one of these at a time and see how you feel reintroducing them. And that's usually a good way to know for sure. How you eat, like I said, is so important. This is especially important is the chewing, whether you are chewing properly or not. You need to chew in order to start the digestive process in your mouth. Saliva contains enzymes which help to start breaking down the food before it actually goes into your stomach. Without that, you're actually missing out an entire phase of your digestive system, and that's likely to give you more problems with acid reflux. Posture, again, is important. I've already explained that a little bit. Slowing down and being mindful when you're eating are huge. You know, if you reduce the speed at which you're eating, if you're actually mindful, if you're eating, you know, paying attention to what you're doing and breathing deeply between each mouthful, that is absolutely crucial to enabling your digestion to take place, and the production of gastric acids will go up. So mindful eating is the way to go forward. So how do you cope with stress? Because this is another major cause, if not the most major cause of acid reflux. Because when you are stressed, you cannot, your body basically switches off your gastric acids and enzymes, because the digestive system actually uses up, this is something you might not be aware of, uses up the most energy of your entire body. So if you're faced with a danger, and your brain will identify a danger when you're shallow breathing, when you're sweating, when you're juggling things around, when that happens, your brain thinks, okay, there's a danger happening. You do not need to be spending time or energy digesting. Therefore, it turns those processes off. So if you are repeatedly being stressed and you're constantly on fight or flight or freeze mode, your brain is always going to keep those processes, the gastric acid and the enzymes, switched off, and you're not going to be able to digest. So what do you do to relax? You need to be eating in a relaxed mode. So obviously don't do yoga or qigong or tai chi when you're eating, but these are great, you know, methods or ways to relax generally, which will help your body to be in a rest and digest mode, and then it will switch on the gastric acids and the enzymes that you need to break down your food so it doesn't go up again. So do you do any of these? Meditation, deep breathing? Do you move? Are you moving? Do you use movement, or do you exercise? Is your exercise actually causing you more stress than good, doing any good to relax you? Do you go into nature, walk the dog? Do you have any talking therapy if you suffer from anxiety or high stress? So any others, you know, let me know in the chat. It's always good to know if you have other ways of relaxing, and there's so many, you know, listening to music, reading, whatever works for you. But these are absolutely essential, and these are a lot of these areas is what I work with my clients on, because acid reflux will never happen without high levels of stress. It's just the way things are. So let me see what you're saying. Yes, dancing, absolutely. That is a very good way to relax, definitely. So, do you need help? I have a one-to-one program, which is the Stop Acid Reflux one-to-one program. And as it explains, it's a one-to-one coaching program with 6 sessions with me over 8 weeks or 10 weeks. You can stretch them as well. And basically includes a system which is proven, tried and tested. And I have worked with this system for years, and I know it works. I yet have to find anyone with acid reflux that it hasn't worked with, that it hasn't worked for. So this is something that does miracles. It's just incredible. this also, the system, because it's me and I'm always, you know, determined to get you the results that you signed up for. I offer continuous support through WhatsApp or Signal or Telegraph, and also through a food diary, which is interactive, and I'm always available in between sessions as well. So you never feel like you're on your own. You always have the accountability of, you know, me checking on you and giving you a nice nudge or little kick in the bottom in a nice way whenever you're not doing something, because that's the only way you will get the results. So I give guidance on food supplements, how to eat, how to reduce stress and anxiety, you know, what is really causing your acid reflux, what are your trigger foods, how to replace them, but also what foods to have and how long do you need to replace them for. Do you really have to cut out all the trigger foods? No. The likelihood is absolutely not. And do you have to forever never drink coffee ever again, or drink alcohol or eat tomatoes? Absolutely not. My aim when I work with people is by the end of the program, you're able to reintroduce and eat quite a lot of the foods you've eliminated throughout the program, but you need guidance for that. You need to feel also, you need to lose the fear of food also in order for that to work. Otherwise, that's going to add stress to your system. And as you know, stress is going to stop your digestive processes. And you will get better sleep as well. So like Sue, for example, who's literally just finished her program with me, she had a constant lump in her throat. She's a head nurse in a surgery, and her acid reflux was getting worse. It was really affecting her work. And you can imagine at the moment the stress she was under with everything going on. And after 8 weeks, she was able to, the symptoms went. She felt much more in charge of her life and her emotions. And we really dug deep into the stresses, and she's completely changed the way she considered food or looked at food, and she's enjoying food again, which is great. So what's the next step? If you wanted some help, you can book a free 30-minute consultation first to discuss your health issues at the moment, what's going on. And we'll talk about your health goals, what you're looking for, and how you can best achieve them. So this is the link to book this 30-minute consultation. I'm going to put it in the chat right now for you to copy and paste if you want to book session with me for 30 minutes. And now is the time for your questions. So I will stop sharing and hopefully you can see me. There you go. Hello to anyone I haven't seen come in, which is great. So Brie and Miriam and Heather, I think is around as well. So any questions? Yes, Emmy, did you want to ask a question? You can, let me unmute.
Yes. Hi,
Go for it,
everyone.
Amy.
Yeah.
Hi.
My question is if with your program it is compatible with like someone like me who just wants to eat anything, and also because I am from a culture, I'm originally from Senegal, so I tend to cook some meals like that are really heavy with rice and spice and oil, although I know that it's not good for me. So I try to reduce it, but I would like to enjoy it more often.
Yeah.
But sometimes I already know before I cook something, I already know the price to pay after that. So with your program, would there be a way where like you can just, have food freedom basically?
Yes, eventually you will get that. But let me ask you a question. Why do you keep, I mean, this is probably not the right place for that, but if you keep eating the foods that you know are making your problem worse, that's what we need to address. We need to see really, to make you understand also what the consequences might be. So without, inducing fear or you know, making you completely fearful of, my God, I need to sort this out. You know, you need to understand exactly what it's doing. You need to understand how it's affecting you. You know, awareness is the first step to any change. You need to be absolutely aware of what's going on and what certain foods that you're eating at the moment are doing to you and how it feels when you're not eating them. I always say, if you're ready to commit to eliminating some of these foods, at least for a little while, and I'm not talking about months and months, we're talking at least 6 weeks, at least you know it's not for the rest of your days, because you will reintroduce certain foods just to see how it feels, and then you can always manage how much of those foods you need to have, you know. So yes, the aim for me with every one of my clients is to actually give that food freedom, because food is never the enemy. It's what's going on in there that's the enemy. So it's about making the environment you know, friendly enough so you can digest pretty much anything by the end of your program. But at the beginning, or you know, throughout your program, it's usually recommended that you might have to eliminate certain foods or put them on pause for just a little while, to give your stomach a break, to give time for healing to take place as well.
Brilliant. I'll book my free session and then we can talk more.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, definitely. I have a lot of clients who are, you know, from Asian origins. I've just finished with a lady from Ghana as well, who had the same issue as you just mentioned. You know, when you live in a culture where the food is the one that's triggering your problems, we need to find ways around that without you feeling completely the odd one out whenever you eat with your family and things like that. But there are lots of ways we can go around it. Yeah, absolutely. So,
Hi, Natalie.
Hi, Kevin.
Hi. I've had GERD, acid reflux, for 20 years now, and I've been on esomeprazole for probably 15 of those 20 years.
Yes.
What are the long-term effects of esomeprazole?
So that particular medication I'm not familiar with, but anything with meprazole at the end is basically they're basically you know, inhibiting acid, which what it means is they're stopping you from producing natural gastric acids. And as you saw in the presentation, the problem, the very cause of acid reflux is the fact that you don't have enough acids to break down and digest the food, so it can go down to the intestines and then go down to the colon, etc., and be eliminated. So when you keep taking drugs, medication that stops you from producing gastric acids, you can imagine what the impact might be. So I'm not going to say any more about it, but I would never tell even my clients working with me, I will never tell anyone to stop their medication, but without fail, everyone I work with will eventually stop their medication. With, you know, usually you do that with your GP, you know, to wean yourself off and things like that. But you need to make the other changes first to make sure you're okay afterwards. Yeah.
I'll book a free session with you as well. So
no problem.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
That would be great. Anyone with any other questions?
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, hi, Natalie. It's Breda.
Oh,
Bree.
Breda.
Breda.
I saw Bree. So I was Hi, Breda.
Long story. It's me.
Okay.
Quick question. So, as you say, there's a very high percentage of people that, especially in the Western world, that suffer with these issues, and generally, a lot of the time, it can be caused by diet and lifestyle and all of the issues you talked about.
Yeah.
But sometimes acid reflux can be caused by an underlying health condition, that it can be a symptom of an underlying health condition. So for someone who hasn't suffered with it before, or not to the same degree,
Yeah.
it's worth, isn't it, seeing your doctor because a lot of doctors are going to give you the antacids, and obviously it's your choice whether you take that route.
Yeah.
But it's worth checking out whether it is a symptom of some underlying problem, because those problems, if they're caught early, can be dealt with better.
Yeah. So when I work with people, I usually, the first step is always to fill in a medical questionnaire anyway, a health questionnaire. So I will know what's going on anyway, if there are other underlying conditions. If there's something out of the ordinary, where I feel there's a symptom that just doesn't fit in with whatever it is, then I would recommend that you see your GP and do some tests. I would always ask anyone who comes to me, if you've done any, colonoscopy, endoscopies, whatever. There's other tests as well that can be done. But yes, there are a lot of underlying conditions that can cause acid reflux, and also medications that you might be taking for other conditions can also cause it. So yeah, it's quite common. Yeah, but always check with your GP. If there's something that doesn't quite fit in and you think, okay, this isn't just acid reflux, then I would always say, yeah, check with, do more investigating. Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
thank you.
Does that answer your question, Brenda?
Yes, yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Yes, another question is constipation one of the causes? No, constipation is not a cause of acid reflux. It's kind of the other way around. The reason why you have acid reflux, as I explained, or one big reason for at least 90% of the population with acid reflux, is low gastric acid. Low gastric acid means your digestion is very slow, and therefore you're going to not break down the food properly and quickly enough for you to have a proper bowel movement. So constipation is very much another symptom of low gastric acid, just like IBS is. And IBS, usually people I work with who have IBS, is a mixture of constipation and diarrhea. So, what you need to look at is basically the very cause of all of that, which is low gastric acid. That's the main reason why this is happening. But the cause of low gastric acid, as I explained, can be food related, stress related, and all of that. And yes, I can definitely help to answer your question. Constipation is one of the, I wouldn't say the easiest conditions to get rid of, but it's definitely a big part of what I do. Yes. I think Marianne had a question. Miriam, sorry, not Marianne, Miriam.
Oh, Natalie, it's just lovely to hear you speak.
Hi, Miriam. Thank you.
And I just want to, our camera's off because we're lurking in bed with my youngest here.
That's great.
Just to say, I just want to encourage anyone who hasn't had a one-to-one with Natalie to really go ahead and do that. She really knows her stuff and she will sensitively take you through it.
Well, thank you.
But I was just going to come back to Brie and say, yeah, absolutely. I've been suffering from acid reflux, but as a consequence of steroids. So it's often the point, isn't it, that, one thing exacerbates another. But just to endorse Natalie, I've been on a staple diet of apple cider vinegar and salt, and it's just amazing. It's contrary, isn't it, to a lot of the things that we've been told before, that if you're acid, then you don't want more acid, but it's that very thing that actually brings the soothing. And my youngest, Rebecca, who's here,
hi, Rebecca.
Hello. We've just done a whole food transformation with her, and she had incredible problems with acid in her tummy. Well, say how that's been for you since you've changed your diet.
It's been amazing.
Oh, amazing. Fantastic. I'm so glad.
I did have one or two.
Yeah, 1 or 2 moments as we've been reintroducing food, but you
Yeah,
know, it's been great. So thank you.
you're very welcome. So it's always good to have a bit of guidance when you reintroduce food, because you don't want to go back to the old ways and to the old symptoms, really. That's, yeah.
So, and everything you've been saying about nurturing your gut has just been, you know, our personal experience on that. So
Yeah. Thank you for your testimonial. So any more questions?
I've got one if nobody else
Yes,
has. Sorry,
Frida,
try
go
not to
ahead.
dominate the call.
No, absolutely.
So what are your views on probiotics? I think we did touch on this because we did have a chat, didn't we,
Yes.
Natalie? But my impression is that you said sometimes they can help, but not necessarily. Is that right?
Yes. When, they wouldn't be my first port of call with acid reflux, because we're talking acid reflux. With acid reflux, you really need to address the problem with acid. And even though there's too little acid and it's not going to compromise the probiotics you're taking, it's what needs to be reestablished. So the probiotics are kind of a second step to that. I would always first work with probably enzymes and various supplements, but not always. Some people don't even like supplements. I don't sell supplements. I don't make my own supplements. So some people don't actually like them, and it's fine too. You can actually reestablish balance without having tons of supplements. So probiotics, yes, sometimes they can make things worse, because some of the probiotics come with prebiotics, which they're basically within the probiotics, and they feed the probiotics, they feed the good bacteria. But those prebiotics sometimes can trigger some problems with people who have already bloating or constipation or certain troubles, gut problems. So it doesn't always work. It's always a case by case, that one. That's why it doesn't work at all to just stuff yourself with lots of supplements, aimlessly, without knowing, because you're actually putting too much stress on your liver, on your other organs, digestive organs, and you're wasting a lot of money. It's going straight down the loop. So yeah, it's I definitely don't recommend self-medicating on supplements, especially with gastric issues. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I think, Jules, you've got a question?
I have. Hello, Natalie.
Hello.
Hello. So I have a question, because so obviously, as you know, I work with food from a different perspective to you in terms of the mindset around food. And I'm just wondering, how much do you find people who suffer with acid reflux also suffer kind of with unresolved or undigested emotions? And how much is the emotional side of things a cause or a symptom of acid reflux? Because that's an area that I obviously am very fascinated by.
Yeah, so am I. And I absolutely love the whole mind-body relationship. And I do talk a lot about it, or, guide around that as well, because I totally believe that physical manifestations are manifestations of some emotions, unresolved emotions very often. So we look at, when we work on the stress, resolving stress and anxieties and things like that, it's a very practical way of doing that. And we will look at unresolved issues, any bitterness, with acid reflux, we look at any bitterness that hasn't been resolved, any guilt or any problems with past emotions that haven't been digested, that haven't been resolved. Absolutely, it's all part of it. And it has to be, because otherwise things will come back. The symptoms will always come back. As I said in the presentation, it's not just what you eat, it's really how you are when you eat it, and how you eat as well. So if you're under a lot of anxiety and stress, and there's a lot of not caused by whatever emotion, you know, you haven't resolved. Could be guilt, could be lots of different things, frustration, anger. You're not going to digest. In fact, in Chinese medicine, they always say, never eat a meal if you have heightened states of emotions. Never eat. You have to wait to be more balanced and calmer. And that includes overexcitement, or when you're overjoyed by something, don't eat, because your body just will not be in the digest mode. So it's not going to work. Great question. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? You can ask an anonymous question in the chat as well, if you have any other questions. Yeah, someone is asking about water and drinking while eating. So this is one of the big tips. It's a small tip, but it's got big consequences if you apply that. When you drink lots of liquids during a meal, you're going to not dilute the contents of your digestive system, of your stomach, but you're going to add volume to the content of your stomach. And that in itself, like I think I mentioned in a presentation, that in itself is going to push the food and whatever little acid you've got in your digestive system, in your stomach, it's going to push upwards and again give you the problem. So you need to stop drinking. Usually I would recommend not drinking, or stop drinking about half an hour or even up to 15 minutes before a meal. But after a meal, you need to wait at least an hour before you start drinking again. If you want to drink anything during a meal, if you really have to drink, warm water, or, even like Miriam mentioned, a little bit of apple cider vinegar in your water, a couple of teaspoons in there, and just sip one sip at a time, a little bit here and there, but never drink loads and loads of water while you're eating. But you do need to be fully hydrated. This is one of the pillars of good digestion. You have to be fully hydrated, and that's I would determine. You will know if you work with me. You will find out exactly how much you need to drink, because again, it's a body by body assessment. Not everyone needs to drink the same amount of water.
Natalie, one other question for me, if
yeah.
you can.
Go ahead.
Hello?
Oh, hello.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, just about. You're breaking up a little bit, or I am.
Okay.
Weight. Does weight have an impact on GERD?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And will exercise improve? Will regular exercise improve your acid reflux?
So for some people, it's actually worse because the movement will sometimes cause the acid reflux symptoms. It will move around. It really depends on the exercise. The kind of exercise you do. Some people who are runners, for example, find it really difficult to run with acid reflux because of the movement, obviously up and down. If you're doing yoga and you have to put your head down or things like that, that's not going to happen. It's not going to be good. So it really depends on what you do. But with acid reflux being so sensitive, people with acid reflux are so sensitive to stress and anxiety. Usually, I would always recommend that you do de-stressing movements, even walking or meditation or qigong or yoga, gentle yoga, maybe without putting your head down. So no downward dogs for you, but just gentle exercise or movement, I call it, to make sure that it doesn't stress you even more than you already are. So it's more about focusing and going into the relaxing activities rather than full-on exercise. It's usually not recommended. And to talk about weight, I don't usually deal with people who are overweight. It's not that I don't deal with people who are overweight. I've put that wrong, sorry. I don't actually treat people for obesity or weight loss. People don't come to me for weight loss. Everyone I work with pretty much everyone I work with secretly or openly will tell me, I would love to lose some weight. Okay, but the first thing we need to reestablish is balance throughout the body. And once you balance out your digestive juices, you balance out your whole digestion and elimination of toxins and all of that, and you balance out your stress as well, then without fail, you will lose weight. Everyone I work with who needs to lose some weight will always lose some weight, because once you eliminate properly as well, then it's just gonna drop off. And without the deprivation, without the diets, it's just about addressing the imbalances and the issues of digestion are major imbalances when it comes to weight. Major.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Yes, someone is saying, as a family, we drink so much water during our meals. Absolutely. Not recommended if you have acid reflux, definitely. If you don't have acid reflux, then you might want to take a few sips here and there. But again, it's just not a great habit to have. Yeah, it is habit. A lot of these issues are just habits. And once you have a better habit that works for you, then it's easy to follow that. Any more questions?
I have one more.
Yes, Bree, go ahead.
So you mentioned exercise and doing strenuous exercise, and I know from experience, if you're suffering quite severely with it, then yes, you don't want to do down dog or certain exercises, certainly too soon after eating, but I guess you shouldn't exercise too soon after eating anyway. But and I've come unstuck with that in the past when there were mild cases of acid reflux and having breakfast a bit late and going to a yoga class and realizing it wasn't a good idea. Nothing major happened, but it wasn't very nice. But if you like to exercise a bit more strenuously than walking or whatever, if you do it say first thing in the morning or away from the meal times, I guess a lot of it's answering my own question. It's probably trial and error, really. But is that more likely than sort of X number of hours after eating that you might be able to do that?
Yes, obviously it's trial and error, like you said, and it really depends on the person. When I look at exercise, and especially strenuous exercise, I look at it from a stress point of view as well, not just whether it's going to be good for you or not. I have not a lot, but quite a few of my clients will come to me and they're actually extreme exercises. They'll exercise every day, like 2-3 times a day. They'll go for a run in the morning and a massive swim in the afternoon, and then whatever, Zumba class in the evening. And then, whenever they have a minute, they'll exercise that amount. And then the food as well is often not balanced out to counter the amount of energy they're using and all of that. So that in itself will cause a huge amount of stress on the body. And again, you need to think about, am I doing this? When I'm doing this kind of exercise, am I sending a stress signal to my brain? That's what you need to think about. Am I pushing myself really to beyond the limits, and is this causing my brain to think I'm being chased by a dinosaur or something, and therefore it's going to switch off my digestive enzymes and gastric acid? Am I doing that? So the timing is definitely important, but also overall you need to see what really is going to help you in the long run. especially if you're suffering from certain conditions as you are now, then you need to really prioritize. Do I want to over-exercise and push myself and all, and at the expense of my gut or other conditions I might be suffering from? Or do I need to switch off that stress response? Because once that stress response is up, by the way, for those who want to be careful about their weight or who are already overweight or obese, you know, once the stress response is up, you're producing huge amounts of cortisol as well, which is the fat holding, you know, the fat storing stress hormone in your body. So you're more likely to put on weight if you exercise to lose weight, but you're pushing too much, then your stress response will make you store fat much more than if you had the right balance. So I help people to really understand the balance. You know, that's really important. For me, I don't work with moderation. I find moderation boring. But my word is balance. You know, it's about reestablishing balance in the food, in movement, in, you know, in here as well. Your emotions and stress response and all of that. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. That amount of exercise, you know, X number of times a day, that sounds like there's a certain amount of stress behind it to be looking to do that, that amount of exercise, and it's not necessarily very balanced or good in the long term.
I mean, you know, we're all a bit victim of that no pain, no gain mentality, which has been going around since, I don't know, what's her name? You know, the lady
Jane Fonda.
Jane Fonda, there you go. You know, that whole
long time.
Yeah, a long time ago. That whole mentality of you've got to push, you know, and you know, boot camps and all that. It's all very aggressive when you think about it. And you know, it doesn't always work for everyone.
No,
especially if you have digestive issues or any conditions that might be stress related, you know. And a lot
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So someone said, I noticed I get sick when I drink ice cold water at once. Yes. Never drink ice cold water because the stomach and your digestive system are very high temperature inside. So when you drink very cold water, you're basically almost shocking. You know, it's just too much of a contrast of temperature between the ice cold water and the inside of your digestive system, and that's not gonna work. It's not gonna help. I always recommend room temperature, not warm, not boiled, just room temperature. Yeah. Okay. Right. So if you want to copy and paste the link for booking a one-to-one session, feel free to do that. You can also send me an email if you want. I'll put it in the chat if you wanted to just send an email rather than book a session. And it's Natalie at newleafnutrition.co.uk, and my website is www.newleafnutrition.co.uk. Okay. Thank you, everyone. You're very welcome, Jules and Miriam. And I'd love to offer you some free sessions. So do feel free to book. And if you know anyone who suffers from acid reflux and you know they would benefit from having a little chat with me, even if they don't, you know, go for the program, I might be able to give some clarity, you know, on their issues, just to give a little bit of advice over the phone or online on Zoom. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Natalie.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your questions. And I will probably do another one of these sessions in about a month.